So I'm recording this video right after I recorded my Halo The Machine Breaks audio review, which will be published like a week ago by the time you're watching this video. I didn't want to put them back to back because I feel like too much Halo is not good for a lot of people. It's great for me, but I get that not everybody's into it. But I wanted to talk for a minute about something that kind of dawned on me as I was wrapping up that video and putting together all my thoughts on it for you guys. The problem with 343, I think, the real problem with 343 is they can never completely tell a story at once. Yes, I know we can argue about the gameplay, we could argue about the lack of multiplayer maps, the lack of live service support, the abysmal failures they've had across the years on all of their games. All 100% true. But I really think that going back to kind of Concord's failure and going back to a lot of these live service game failures, it's that you don't get to know the characters, and because you don't build that relationship with those characters and you don't see their story fully fleshed out, it's hard to invest any time or money or effort in anything that they do. You know, God of War comes out with a DLC and everybody loses their mind because it's a continuation or a conclusion of Kratos' story. And we all know Kratos. We love Kratos. We've been with this dude now for like 15 years. He's got a kid, his trials and tribulations, the weight of his previous sins as a burden on his body. So anything that Kratos is up to, you're invested in. Anything Nathan Drake is into, you're invested in, and so on and so forth. The problem that 343 has is they can't seem to stick to a single concept or story and fully wind it out from beginning to end in one place. I do like the idea of the transmedia universe, the idea that stories are weaved between book and comic book and video game and blog posts, and all these little bite-sized pieces of information feed together, almost in the way that From Software tells stories. And in that sense, I could argue that 343 is kind of like a pioneer, a little bit, in how they tell stories because, hey, they've kind of got that piece down. The problem is that probably like 0.00001% of us being myself included, are the only ones that actually follow all these breadcrumbs through from beginning to end. And as a result, a lot of people don't get the full story. They're not invested, and I get it. They're not into it the way that I am, and they don't see it all the way through from beginning to end, and as a result, they miss out on a lot of stuff. The Didact story that was written a couple years ago or last year that tells the culmination of the Didact story is awesome. 99% of the people who are Halo fans think that the Didact died at the end of Halo 4. Because it kind of seems like he did. You'd be wrong. He makes a triumphant, air quotes, return in Halo Escalation for like 2 issues. He's stabbed in the eye, and then he's killed again. However, his story doesn't end there, because the book picks up after that and then narrates and weaves it all together. The video game, the comic book, the new story, obviously, some of the stuff that happened in the extended universe with the Prometheans, and it wraps all that up together in a nice package and gives the Didact a true and final farewell and true and final send-off. Now, would a video game be great on seeing the Didact's road to redemption? No, it would not. It doesn't hold as much value when you're just watching a cutscene of a character. But they could have woven his story into a greater video game narrative about redemption, maybe parallel arcs, just like what Bungie did during their stint, where you saw the rise and fall of the Arbiter and the Master Chief simultaneously, here 2 bitter enemies becoming heroes and friends in the end. You could have that buddy cop story. You could have taken elements from Halo 4 and Halo 5 and woven in a redemptive arc for the Didact and told it all, and everybody would have had a much better appreciation for the character, and it would have all been told in one place. But we didn't get any of that. What we got was a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and then a book kind of sweeps it all up. And in the same vein, that audiobook that I just listened to, which was awesome, does exactly that. That's why I'm so excited about the audiobook, is because it does actually go and tell a complete story. It does actually fill in all the gaps of some of the Promethean Knight's motivations and some of the Promethean Knight doubts, and when you're attacking them and fighting them, why do they look the way they do? All those things are actually explained, which is great because it's a really, really cool idea. It's just not fleshed out in a single place. And instead of 343, really trying to elaborate on one single story, they quickly pivot to another story and another story and another story. And then after it's all said and done, really, really talented authors go back and retcon in and weave in this other overarching narrative to try to make some sense and some closure for everything that we just saw. And it's like, man, why couldn't you do that in the first place? And game after game after game and video, I mean, like, how many times are we going to talk about this that they just haven't gotten it right? And that's exactly what they did here. They got it wrong again by not telling a full story. And then really looking back and thinking about the whole arc of the Prometheans, it was like, man, how unceremoniously they were dropped at the end of Halo 5. And, Cortana's death happening off screen. And a lot of the tie-ins from like the UNSC Spirit of Fire and Captain Cutter's adventures not making their way in. I am sure 343 is working in conjunction with Karen Travis or some other miracle worker author who's going to find a way to narrate and weave in all of these things in a collective and cohesive way in some book at some point in the future. But most people will have forgotten about Halo Wars by then. Most people will have forgotten about Captain Cutter by then, and by Anders, and by all the other sacrifices that were made by heroes. And we'll have already been on to a new Halo game, maybe, or maybe not, I don't know. We'll be on to something new, and nobody's going to go back and look at the old stuff and wonder what happened and why. And that just boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that 343 still can't get it through their heads. But I really think, thinking about it, that's the problem they have. The gameplay aside, it's the narrative. They don't tell a complete story. I don't know if they think that by having these loose ends and hooks, they're going to be able to make a quick book sale on the back end. It just hemorrhages fans. And ultimately, you are left with a small percentage of us, the 0.0001%ers, who are still reading through all these things, still trying to piece together, who are fascinated by the story, turn around and telling the larger audience, hey, this is the stuff you missed. The larger audience going, wow, that sounds really cool. But because they're not experiencing it for themselves, they're not going to go out and enjoy it and consume the media and invest in the IP in the same way that we are. It's kind of the same way that, like, you think about, it's kind of the same way when you think about, if I had to tell you a story and you watched a movie and I said, hey, go watch this hot new movie, go watch, I don't know, some Christopher Nolan movie, the new Dune, whatever. And then when you're done watching it, you got to go read another book, which will explain the back motivation of this one character. And then you need to read this comic book to read the back motivation of this character. And then after all that is done, wait 2 more years, and I'm going to give you a book which is going to completely change your thought process on what you just saw. And then after reading that book, you're going to have a really cool story. And nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. They're going to say, I'm good. I'm a nut job. I do it. I actually enjoy it. But there's not a lot of us left. And I beg 343, as cool as the idea of the transmedia universe is, the idea of taking a story and splitting it across multiple formats of media, stop it. Stop it for the main story arcs. Save it for the games. The games are your bread and butter. The games is where people are going to consume it. And that is where, to me, the franchise lives and dies. When you tell an incomplete story or a fragmented story that takes years to develop, a fragmented story that takes volumes and volumes of content to deliver on, you'll lose a lot of people. And that sucks, because it's a really cool idea. And I got goosebumps, legitimate goosebumps, listening to the end of the Machine Breaks and knowing exactly what was happening and exactly who they were talking about and exactly what the result of that character was going to be. And that was really, really, really cool. And a lot of people won't experience that, and they should experience that, because Halo is so much more than a first-person shooter. When you take a step back and look at the larger soap opera, the space novelization of moving and merging characters together and warring tribes and factions and reliefs and old technology crossed with new technology, all of that comes together in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful piece. But a lot of people won't witness it. That sucks. That's it for today's video. A little bit of a Bronco rant for you guys. I'm heading over to my friend Mary's house to help her fix her computer. Wish me luck. Wish the Halo franchise luck. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.